I'm going to shock the world here.
I'm calling for an open tryout. If anyone is watching this, I'm calling for an open tryout. I got a year of eligibility
You
left.
might have some.
Anthony, where is home for you?
Home is Medland.
That's wrong.
All right, I hear what you're saying, but I just have to.
Mixtape, and this guy catches and shoots from anywhere.
Breakdown starts right.
Down to close out the fall semester. I'm Jack.
Electric factory. I can't wait to get started.
Absolutely.
All right, so guys, let's jump right into it. Looking back at men's ice and then took on Cornell for the second time in a span of 8 days in the Frozen Apple at Madison Square Garden. They did not lose a game in regulation during the 3 games. Would you consider the 3-game stretch a success? Mike, we will start with you.
Yeah, absolutely. I would consider it a success. It truly goes to show the resilience of that team because, you know, there was a tough 2 of those games were ECAC, that game at MSG being a non-conference game. They didn't lose, like they said. You look at the scores there, 3-1 win against Cornell, overtime loss to Colgate, and then the tie to Cornell again really just shows that resilience in the team. They scored their opponents, outscored them 8-3.
Yeah, I don't think it's necessarily a success like, hey, gun-ho, let's fight to the end of the season, let's win the ECAC. I think it's not a success, but a step in the right direction. When you look at earlier in the season when they went up to play Maine in those 2 games, Maine was ranked 9 and 10th at that point. They lost 1-2 and 5-6, and that second game was that overtime loss. But you look at the matchup against Cornell, they beat them 3-1, the first time winning at Liner Rinks since 2018. 6 years, an entire class went through Quinnipiac and did not win a single game at Cornell. I think it's a step in the right direction that this young and chaotic team is starting to come together. Like you said, they didn't lose a single game in regulation. It goes to show over these last maybe 14 or 15 games that they've been able to go from a completely new group, never played a single game of hockey together, to a point where they can start to compete and win games. And I think that was on full display against Cornell on the road at Liner Rink, and again at Cornell against Cornell at MSG.
And you mentioned that, you know, they haven't won in a long time at Cornell. That in itself should be a success.
Steps in the right direction.
But overall, it should be a success. They really haven't lost. You know, it's not the ending up winning a national championship, but as a team as itself, that should be considered a success. The entire weekend they had. I mean, look at Dylan Silverstein, 53 saves through those 3 games, especially because you and I talked about at the beginning of the season, where was he going to fit in? Was he the backup? Was he the starter? Now making all those saves in those games, career-high 30 saves at one point, it seems like he's carrying them to success on the success that they've already had.
Yeah, and Silverstein's played against Cornell in both of those games in the last 8 days, like Jackie mentioned. But a lot of the first years are also stepping up as well. You look at Aaron Schwartz. You look at Aaron Bollinger. He's a grad student, but he's still having a lot of success. 4 of the top 15 scorers on the Bobcats team are first years, and you have Silverstein. The first half of the season is exciting, and with players and phrases and words that you've heard throughout this entire season. I think that chaos is an opportunity, but I'll get into that a little bit later. Give a little foreshadowing.
I'm sure we're not going to be done with the ice hockey debate.
All right, moving to women's ice hockey, the team lost in the Nutmeg Championship to Yale in the shootout. Will losing the Nutmeg Classic give the women's team added fuel to close out the season strong? Connor?
Yeah, I don't think is not as much as some may think, to be completely honest with you. Every game is a completely new game. You look at today's game against Sacred Heart. It was 2-1 through 3 periods, and Emerson Jarvis scored in the last 2 minutes of the game. But just literally 4 days ago, they outscored Sacred Heart 8-1 in the Nutmeg Classic. I think when you look at that loss against Yale, yeah, it may be a small blip, but they've had tons of success in the first half of the season. I think if they truly do want to finish out the year strong, they're going to have to not have the second half of seasons that they've had over our time here at Quinnipiac. They've had In 21-22, they've gone 8-7-1. 22-23 went 10-5, and last season they went 7-6-1 in the second half of the season. I think the second half of the season is going to be a key determiner of if this Bobcats team can finally get over the hump. 2 years ago, they went to triple overtime against Penn State and eventually lost to Ohio State. Season is going to be a key determiner if they can get over that hump and make it to their first Frozen Four in program history.
Yeah, I'm going to completely disagree with you. I think it adds a ton of fuel to that fire because for the last couple of seasons, you know, they could have won that 5th consecutive championship. They're 12th altogether, and then they lost. Winning is something that comes in the Nutmeg Championship. You know, if I was on that team and we lost, I'd be like, let's go. We're ready to take the entire 2-1-2 in their last 5. It's not the best record, you know, in your which ended up being a loss to Yale.
Yeah.
But I think that should fuel that fire because I think if you win all those games, you go in with that mindset that we can take them all after that loss. Let's reset and go into the new year strong. That it can, like you were saying, go to the NCAA. I can think they can use that momentum and eventually just power through and potentially win an NCAA championship. Getting a bit of ahead of myself, I think they can do it.
I don't think there's a lot of stake that you can put into these first half of the season wins. I think when you come to the second half of the season, they have 2 major road trips. They go to Cornell and Colgate again. They also go to Clarkson and St. Lawrence in the second half of the year. And at this point right now, all 4 of those teams are ranked inside that top 15 in the US CHO poll. So I think you can't put too much value in that tie and eventual loss to Yale, but I think it's going to be a key determiner that if we look back on this season, that Yale game might be a key factor of if they make the tournament in the Frozen Four or not.
All right.
Well, we are nearing the first commercial break of the night. When we come back, Connor and Mike will play professor and give each winter sports team their end of semester grades. But before we go to break, we wanted to take a look back at Mike's best broadcast calls during his 4 years presented by QBSN. Take a look.
Pelosi trying to go backdoor for Cooper Moore, and he can stuff it home. Still a delayed penalty. Belace across, Marcellus down low. Wilma Schwartz! His 6th of the season, and we're tied at 2. Shriver has it in deep. Shriver. It's Nina Steigoff. Quinnipiac up by a pair. Late. Shot deflected on Duplessis. The rebound still loose, and they score! It's Malone! Boston College has no Sunday scaries no more! They're going to the NCAA Frozen Four, and they're going to St. Paul, Minnesota. Mass confusion at the front of the net, and Boston College slaying the defending champions in Quinnipiac. Chow trying to lose it. He throws it in front. He scores! Oh my, Zach Metza! 3-2 Bobcats after a back and forth. Tomorrow afternoon, Zach Metza tucks it home. Constant with the clear as Treeler has numbers up ice. Treeler in front for Chernesky there. He scores! Chernesky in air! Chernesky in air! Chernesky in air in overtime! The champs will play Boston College on Sunday night. Overtime winner! Victor Chernesky in air double dips. 3-2 Bobcats in overtime.
When I was in foster care, I never knew when I would have to move. So I always had my suitcase ready to go. Then one day, I was adopted. My parents cooked my favorite. I never thought I would go on. They gave me a home and an even better reason to use that suitcase. My parents aren't perfect, but they're perfect for me.
To make sure that the time that I have, I spend with them. It doesn't matter how tired you are. And you can just see in their faces it's such an incredible moment. It's those moments that are my favorite.
If you need to do something to feel okay to drive, you're not okay to drive. Don't drive buzzed.
Thank you for sticking with us. It's now time to look at the guys' report cards for each of the winter sports teams. Professor Singer, let's start with your grade for the men's ice hockey team.
So, my report card so far for the men's ice hockey team, I gotta give them a solid B. I mean, a B plus if they're, my fault, misspoke because I'm just so happy to be here for my final show. A B plus, they're 6-6-1, and in conference they're 3-3-1. But going back to one of the points that we talked about before, Connor, is that in their last couple of games, they really haven't lost. They haven't been playing horrible. Yeah. They won a regulation, an overtime loss, and in that shootout loss, which ended up being a tie. And I think they're headed in that right direction. Yeah. They're going to be carried for success. That's why they get a B plus right now.
Yeah, I think if you asked me this question before they went up to Cornell and Colgate, I probably would have given them I have to give them a B plus.
Yeah.
In post-game press conference, chaos, I feel like, is an opportunity to show what this team is made of, show this culture that is constantly talked about over his last 31 years, and they've shown plenty of flashes. I think that second period at MSG, when they scored 3 goals, 3 unanswered goals, was a prime opportunity. CAC as well. Other teams are starting top of the tables as of right now in the ECAC. Princeton also just swept number 12 Ohio State in the entire country this past weekend. Previously not ranked at all, but Clarkson have been getting votes, so they have a lot of opportunities here coming up in the ECAC. B plus, step in the right direction.
Now staying on the ice, but to the women's team, Mike, start us off.
You know, I also, as I quickly look down at my note, A. They're going to get an A. They're doing really well right now. I mean, their record, they're 12-4-3. They are one of the best. They have one of the best records for a winter sports team, and I'm sure we're going to both touch on the team that does have the better record. They're 2-1-2, like we mentioned before, the past 5, and they lost in that nutmeg, which is going to give them all the momentum. But they, through November 1st through the 12th, a 5-game winning streak, dominating opponents, outscoring them 10-2. They are, you know, I love my puns here. They're quite literally firing and scoring on all cylinders. Yeah. They have the chutzpah to take on other teams that might be above them or to take any team on, essentially. Yeah. They're doing so well.
Yeah, I think I'm a little bit more of a pessimist when it comes to the women's ice hockey team. I think I'm going to give them an A- for this one. I know I talked about it earlier, but every game quite literally is a new game. We talked about this Sacred Heart scoreline where it was 8-1 and then 2-1 just earlier this morning. There's so much parity in college hockey. I think when we talked about it earlier, all the ranked teams and the road trips they have to go on to Colgate, Cornell, and Clarkson and St. Lawrence, I think it's going to be a key factor of how this team performs in the second half of the season. Like we mentioned, but looking at their schedule, I would have wanted to see year they talked about Minnesota, Duluth, and Wisconsin over the last 2 years and 3 years, really. But how's this team going to compare? To teams in the ECAC outside of the ECAC as well?
That's kind of interesting that you mentioned that. I'm going to quickly go back to my notes here. Yeah. But, you know, you were talking about, you know, a more tough out-of-conference schedule. Mm-hmm. They beat Sacred Heart twice. Yeah. Regardless. I think that's tough enough, especially because maybe there isn't that much better opportunities out there for them to play. There's not a lot of better teams. They dominated, to your point, Sacred Heart 8-1 and then 2-1. So I think that other teams just might be afraid to play the Bobcats. 12-4-3. That's nothing to sneeze at there.
All right, let's move over to the hardwood. The men's basketball team, who is currently 3-5. Connor, what is your grade for them?
Yeah, to be completely honest with you, I've not been impressed by the men's basketball team. I'm gonna give them a B-. I was even thinking about giving them a C+ at some point, but when you come into the season, a preseason MAAC Player of the Year, preseason favorite to go to the NCAA tournament, the first time in program history, all the teams that they've lost to have been in the NCAA tournament or should have been in the NCAA tournament in the past year. You know, there's been spurts where they've acted like they should be the MAAC favorite, but they've also acted spurts where they should be acting like deer in the headlights, to be completely honest with you. You know, I feel like they're putting way too much pressure on Amari Monroe and just give him the ball and say, hey, lead us to the promised land, because the number 2 that he's wearing now, last year was worn by Matt Blanc, and I think they're still reeling from those moments of they haven't been able to find production the way that Matt Blanc was able to go get 20, 25 points easy on any given night. So I think that's why I got to give him a B-. Right now, come January, I think I might have a different answer with I play in conference, but we'll have to see in just a few months from now.
Yeah, I absolutely agree that B- area, you know, that lower half of the B. I agree with you as well, because you look at some of the games that they've played, they barely won against Maine. You know, that was a 3-point deficit, 58-55, and then they barely won against Navy, 74-63. That was only about 11 points, and they lost to a Stonehill team, 80-69, and then they lost 88-74 the following day. Like, they've barely gotten by if they have, and if they've lost, they've also barely gotten by. They need to find that rhythm, that consistency. You were at Atlantic City last year. You saw them like go the distance, especially in conference play. But it's just not living up to that height. Like what we were talking about with the hockey teams, got to just find that rhythm going into the second half, because they have a ton of conference games going once we're off air.
Yeah, I agree.
Switching to the women's basketball team, they are off to a hot start, going 6-1. Connor, tell us your grade.
Yeah, I think it's probably the best grade that I think it is actually the best grade that I've given out. I think I'm going to give them an A. Not quite an A+ yet, because of how they handled that game against Miami. Could have gone up to an A+. I think they're playing extremely well. They're the 52nd ranked team in the entire country in net, which comes in about a factor supreme, like the power rankings pretty much, for college basketball. They have one of the toughest schedules in NCAA, similar to how the men's basketball team was. They've played so many teams who were in the NCAA tournament last year. 6-1, the best record they've had since 2016, 2017. And that point guard, the first year from Israel, Gal Raviv, she is legit. So, like, if I could start an offense around somebody, it would have to be Gal Raviv. You know, Trish Fabry, we asked her earlier in the year, you know, last year you said your team was crawling. A lot of young, inexperienced players, but this year they're kind of walking right now. If they can get to a sprint and be playing as one of the best teams in the MAAC, I think this is a real team and a threat, not only to the MAAC, but even to make a deep run in the NCAA tournament. Who knows?
I mean, you were talking about how you gave them an A. I guess we're just both being generous in the last show of the semester.
We are roommates.
We are roommates, and they were roommates. And I'm also gonna give them an A. If you can take that full screen right now, look at that, an A, because they are simply amazing, amazing Bobcats right now. Their first loss of the season came this past Sunday. I mean, they're now 6-1. They're quite literally firing on all cylinders. They have 2 out-of-conference games against Yale and Vermont, excuse me. But 2 games, you look at the history books that they've won at, so there should be no pressure on them to really be the underdogs in that game. At this point, would you be surprised if they went legitimately the distance back to the NCAA tournament? Because they are just on fire right now.
Yeah, I think the big test will be against Fairfield when they play in conference, but I think as of right now, it's a team to look out for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. And, you know, they lost that tough game to Miami 83-74, but it's a team that they barely see, if they've seen them at all to this point. It was a team that weren't, 100% comfortable playing. Not a lot of good scouting at them, but it was still a close game. That one game that they lost was a close game. Nothing to sweat off. Just, shrug the game off your back, move on to the next one. They're 6-1. Nothing to sneeze at. Happy holidays, because the gift is just winning. Because Trish Fabry knows how to win.
It is now time for our second commercial break of the night. When we come back, we will review the volleyball season. Stick with us.
Everyone has a ritual, that small thing that keeps us focused. A habit we never skip to clear our minds and elevate our performance.
But what do you do to keep your head in the game, to drown out the self-doubt and to support your mental health? Because being your best isn't just about taking care of your body.
It's about taking care of your mind and mental health. Discover the resources you need to keep your mind focused and your mental health a priority.
Can vote early.
In person.
By dropping off their ballot.
Or mailing it in. With so many options, you can vote when it's convenient for you.
Election day is the last day to cast your ballot.
So the question isn't why vote early.
It's why wait. Join the celebration and find out how you can vote early at voteearlyday.org.
Welcome back to Bobcat Breakdown. If you're just joining us, I'm Jackie Drovo alongside Connor Court and Mike Singer. At the start of Thanksgiving break, the women's volleyball team traveled to Siena College to play in the MAAC championship tournament. For the second year in a row, the team lost to Fairfield in the final after losing the MAAC championship. Would you consider this season a success for the volleyball team, even though they didn't bring a trophy home? Mike, what do you say?
Yeah, I hate to be the bearer of bad news here, guys, but I don't think the season was a success at all. I mean, you end your arch nemesis. They're 5. If you be my just top and to end up taking the game and being that X factor.
Mike, I love the emotion that you're showing right now. You're quite literally shaking the table right now. But I want to bring up one point. There, ever since the Quinnipiac won the MAAC championship back in 2022 against Fairfield, 2-26. You talk about 5 and excuse me. This rivalry that we see to be forming between Quinnipiac and Fairfield at being at the top of the MAAC every single year, it reminds me a lot of the Michigan and Ohio State college football rivalry. Both of those schools' seasons are defined on how they perform against those two teams. I think that's how we're going to keep viewing this team and this competition as we head into the later parts, years down the road of the Kyle Robinson era. That's been going on for almost 5 years now, which is crazy. 6 years, excuse me. But when our beat reporters at Q30 talked to Kyle Robinson after the season when they lost to Fairfield in that championship game, they said this was a defining season. A defining season. They were able to get the 2 seed despite losing the preseason player of the year, Ginevra Fagnoni, but a lot of other injuries, knickknacks here and there, and they were still able to get that 2 seed and still able to perform and went the distance. But I do think this is a success.
Very hard to call it a success when you know you're playing Fairfield in the final. It's
clearly.
Road that brought, but it's just. Yes,
we'll talk after the show. We'll talk after.
Well, we are nearing our last commercial break of the night, but before we get to break.
So I win to get on the e-board, and it's one of the best workers I know, and I'm genuinely lucky.
Associate producer along. Still there. Wow. You know, Eli asked me, he said, is that Singer, you always brought a bright light to my face in those post shows, especially towards the end of the first. There's a few conversations that we had, and when things got tough, we went through producer and executive producer, realizing names. Bright light you brought to everyone's face. I still, when I hear Donkashane, proud of you for everything you've done. It's pretty cool to think right to it, and we're like, yeah, I want to get into this, and now you're constant presence and a true working professional in the role, which is really smart. Many incredible things. I'm so proud of you. Can't wait to see what you do, and yeah, I'll see you soon.
Kid to be a space. A couple of my final years in great things.
Oh my, Mike Singer. I hear it is your final show on Breakdown. Wow, that means I'm getting old. Must be 2 years out. I wish you all the best in life, dude. All the best in the future. Please do reach out to me. Let me know how things are going, and enjoy this moment, man.
You're not gonna get it all right. Just make sure you nail the big stuff.
Mama!
Get it right at nhtsa.gov/the-right-seat.
Can't believe you're doing this alone. I've done it before. I remember. You threw your back out. How you holding up? I did it when Felicia left. I'll figure it out. I know you will, but you don't have to do it alone. That's all I'm saying. If I promise to look into it, will you drop it and help me build this fence? Now you need my help. It can be a real pain sometimes, you know what?
Mm-hmm. If you or a veteran you know needs support, don't wait. Reach out. Find resources at va.gov/reach.
Owen, when you came into my life, it was a whirlwind.
I just can't do it.
We didn't know what the future would hold, but we knew you would always be a part of it. Adopting you was the best decision in our life. And I am so proud to call you my son.
Thank you for joining us for the final break of Bobcat Breakdown. I'm Connor Core. To rip off the Band-Aid of the inevitable, it is a bittersweet farewell to my roommate of 3 years and friend, Mike. Throughout the 4 years that I've got of complaining, the relationship, hope more and more random things and continue to play matter. I'm sure everyone watching this truth that may be too sensitive to tell everyone else. That is Mike for me. On the flip side, I've been able to witness probably one of the happiest moments of my entire life when Quinnipiac won the national championship against Minnesota. Mike was right next to me, soaking up every moment with some of the best friends that I will ever have. All because a puck crossed the goal line is a moment that will live on. Let's be honest, looking for our first full-time jobs after college, maintaining and successful. 3 years ago, someone you met quite literally this semester. Some people come and go, and don't forget to hold on to the ones that mean most to you closely, especially during this holiday season. Yes, this time is unfortunately winding down, but the moments will live on forever. There's yin and yang, peanut butter and jelly, Woody and Buzz Lightyear, and forever, Mike and Connor. Congrats, my friend, and to infinity and beyond.
When you were little, you determined and named someone your best friend or your BFF. Throughout life, it is expected that the same person will stay by your side the entire time. Though that may be true, it is also expected that you make new friends and new BFFs. When I got to Quinnipiac 4 years ago, I was the shell of the person I am today. I was away from home in a new place surrounded by new people with no friends. Because let's be real, that is probably the scariest part about college. On August 30th, 2021, I walked into a class completely unrelated to my major, scared out of my mind at all the new faces I was seeing, or half seeing for that matter. We still had to have face masks on in class back then. And that sea of faces was my best friend, Mike Singer. Little did I know at the time, or maybe I did, who knows, that Mike would be the person I'd call my best friend for these past 4 years and for all the years to come. There is not another person I would want to have shared all these memories and moments together. Yes, we may fight for the spotlight sometimes, but it is so worth it every single time. It is tough to put into words the love and appreciation I have for Mike during these past 4 years. Mike has seen me at my best and at my worst and never judged or lost faith in me during any of those times. He truly brings out the best in people and never fails to make anyone smile regardless of how bad his jokes are. There is no one else more deserving of all the success and joy he will have in the future. I am proud of each and everything you have done and accomplished. It has been one of the greatest times of my life getting to grow and experience everything Quinnipiac has had to offer us over these past 4 years. It is a little scary looking back at our 18-year-old selves, but so rewarding when you look at where we are now. I truly love and fall in love with you more in each and every single day, and I'm proud in all of you and what you have accomplished and what you will continue to do. You deserve the world and so much more.
I promised everyone I wouldn't do this, but Bobcat breakdown Q30. If you asked me as a first year if I could ever imagine saying goodbye to an organization that has given me everything, I would have looked at you like you were insane. But for me, it's the end of the road. Coming in as a first year, I had absolutely no idea what I wanted to do with myself while I pursue my degree in journalism. And if you ask me today, I'd still give you the same answer, but follow it up by saying that being here in this field is something that I never want to step away from. Over the course of 4 years, I've been able to do the unthinkable, and trust me, I've seen some stuff, to say the least. I've had the absolute pleasure of working with 19 producers with 4 different sports directors and 5 production managers. I've covered some of the biggest hockey games in Quinnipiac's history and produced 71 consecutive episodes of Bobcat Breakdown, which is about 70 more than I could have ever imagined possible, and have made countless friends along the way. Being in this organization and being a part of student media has given me relationships and friendships that I could have never imagined. To be able to do it all again, I'm so sorry, would be a dream come true. If you aren't sure where you belong, I'm so sorry. Come on in and join us. It'll be the single best decision you make at college. There are so many people to thank for believing in me, yet there isn't enough time to. Thank you all that have watched and have listened week after week and game after game. Lastly, a thank you to this organization and this show for all the love, support, and encouragement that it has shown me for the last 4 years. I can proudly say that I gave my all to this organization for 4 years straight without a single regret. As my time at Q30 has come to a close, I thank you all for 4 years of unforgettable memories. Thank you, Q30, for everything. So for one last time, I'm Mike Singer. Good night, everyone.